that was the trigger point for me when I saw what autism looked like in real life, not just this medical definition. Suddenly, it was something that I could immensely relate to. When you've spent your whole life not being believed, to finally find people and a community that do believe you and do say crazy things like, I understand, it's absolutely life-changing to have that validated and to find out other people have had this experience as well. Hi everyone, welcome back to Aspergers from the Inside. You're here with Paul. So today's video topic is, are you undiagnosed autistic? How to tell if you're on the autism spectrum. So this is part 2 in this 3-part series for this month's Patron's Choice topic. So if you haven't seen last week's video on the AQ test, the online autism quotient test, then you may want to check that out as well. So in this video today, we want to answer the question of what does it actually feel like to be autistic? So I've broken the video up into 3 parts. So I'll start with the trouble with external factors and looking at behavior, because very often we look at lists of behavior and symptoms and all of these things to try and tell if someone is autistic, and that can be problematic. So I'll give you some background as to why that can be problematic. Secondly, I'm going to describe for you the inner experience of 3 defining experiences of what it's like to be autistic. And what you will find is if you really strongly identify with these things, then that's a very strong reason to believe that you might be on the spectrum. And thirdly, if this is you, then what should you do next? What are some next steps that you might want to take? This video is for you if you are thinking that you might be on the spectrum yourself. So sometimes it can be helpful to label ourselves, as I'll discuss later, but very rarely is it helpful to try and label other people. So if someone in your life is displaying autistic characteristics, then this video might help you understand their experience, but it should not be used to try and diagnose them from afar. If you want to help your possibly autistic friend, probably the best thing you can do is to take the time to get to know them and what they need and help them to accept themselves as they are. Okay, so number 1, the trouble with looking at external factors such as behavior. So the reason I wanted to start with this is because the diagnosis criteria for autism essentially looks at behavior and other externally visible criteria to make an assessment. And while that might make sense for children who are essentially just acting on their impulses, as we get older, we develop more and more sophisticated coping strategies to overcome our natural weaknesses, right? We learn to mask, we learn to blend in, we learn different ways to avoid certain situations and overcompensate for other situations. So in short, external behavior, especially in adults, does not tell the whole story. Masking is essentially covering up your differences so that others don't see them. It's repressing certain behaviors, it's pretending to be normal, it's doing what you think you should do at the expense of what comes naturally to you, right? And I don't mean sometimes doing what you should do instead of what you'd like to do, right? Everyone masks sometimes. I mean all the time. So it's actually possible to mask for decades and not even realize that you're masking. So it's actually quite a common experience that after receiving a diagnosis as an adult, your friends and family might tell you that you're suddenly being more autistic and you never used to do this and you're only doing this now because you've somehow got it in your head that you have autism. Whereas actually it's always been inside, you've just been repressing it the whole time. So if you are those friends and family, it's important to recognize that the person is trusting you with showing you a side of themselves that they've been hiding for most of their life because they didn't think it was appropriate to be themselves. So anyway, that's why in this video we'll be focusing on your internal experience of what it feels like to be autistic rather than looking at external characteristics and how to spot autism from the outside. Okay, so number 2, 3 defining examples of the autistic experience. So I should be upfront that I'm talking about these examples from my own experience, so they might not apply to absolutely everyone, but I have met hundreds of autistic people, and these 3 experiences are incredibly common. So I would be really interested to hear how you relate. If you know you're autistic, I'd be really interested to hear how you relate to these, and especially if you don't particularly relate to 1 or 2 aspects of them. That would be interesting to hear as well, because we are a very, very diverse community. So the first defining experience is of feeling different. And I don't mean just a little bit different. I mean, we call Asperger's the wrong planet syndrome sometimes, right? I have a friend of mine who, at the age of about 6, actually asked her mother, like, she didn't think, oh, maybe I'm adopted. She asked her mother, am I an alien? Am I actually a different species to all of the other kids in my class? Because I just don't seem to have anything in common. I can't relate to them. And as an adult, you know that no, we are part of the same species, we're just different. But as a child, she actually thought that was a legitimate possibility, that maybe she was an alien and no one had told her. That's how different she felt from her peers. And another example of this is if I go to the park and I see some ducks on the lake, I'm not thinking, oh, I need to join in. I'm thinking, well, they're ducks on the lake. They can swim around by themselves, and I have no compulsion to jump in and swim around with them. Similarly, if I did jump in and try to swim around with them, they'd run away. So similarly with my peers when I was in school, especially primary school and even kindergarten, I'd look at my peers and think, wow, they're interesting. Check out these funny little creatures and what they're doing. Aren't they cute? But I didn't necessarily have the urge or compulsion to join in and do what they were doing, because it just didn't register that I should be, that I was one of them. And the opposite experience is common as well. If you do want to join in, you don't know how to do that. How are they all doing the same thing and joining in this thing? When I run up to these ducks in the park, they all fly away. So what am I doing wrong? So a second defining experience is of not being believed. And this relates to the first one quite significantly, in the sense that if I am so different in one particular way, when I share that difference with others, people think I must be joking. So what are some examples? If I hear something that other people don't hear, they think, I didn't hear that, you must be crazy. If I smell something, or other senses that other people don't, or if I'm affected by something, it's very hard for people to believe that I have trouble reading, right? I have an engineering degree. How can you have trouble reading? Surely that doesn't make sense. What do you mean when I take away your visual schedule, suddenly you can't remember times and dates and your executive functioning skills fall through the floor? That doesn't make sense. Surely you must be exaggerating. So when you do share something you know to be true about yourself to other people, and the response is, no, surely you must be exaggerating. That can't possibly be true. That can have a very crushing effect on your own self-esteem and self-belief, and make it even less likely for you to advocate for yourself in the future, because I know that if I tell someone what I really need, if I tell someone the lights are too bright, for example, they'll just be like, yeah, I know the lights are bright, everyone has that issue. Well, actually, no, not everyone has that issue. There's actually a term for invalidating the experience of another person. It's called gaslighting, and the result of it is a chronic lack of self-confidence, because I essentially think I must be going crazy, because whenever I share my experience with someone, they tell me that it can't possibly be true and I must be making it up. Number 3 is something that I'll call social confusion. It's not necessarily a lack of social skills, because some autistic people have learned certain coping mechanisms to do well in social situations, but it's an over-intellectualizing of something that most neurotypical people just do naturally without thinking. So I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, one of the things that I just couldn't figure out how to do was how to walk with a group from this class to this class. How close do you get? Do you walk in front? Do you walk behind? Can you talk at the same time? There's never any space. What do I do? I got a feeling that most of the other kids in my class didn't spend most of their time thinking and worrying about how close they were standing to people and how to walk with the group without feeling like you've been left out of the group. And that's an example of how I'm trying to solve this social problem intellectually, and I'm overanalyzing everything that's happening. And what I can do with that is instead of actually getting in there and just trying it, I'll look from afar and think, what can I do? What can I say? How can I participate in this group? And actually, I'm sitting over here just watching everybody, the little anthropologist, as the other analogy goes. And then what happens is, when I do actually make contact with this alien race and try and interact with them, suddenly it's so distracting and it's so overstimulating that I lose my ability to remember all of my preparation, and I don't go very well. And then afterwards, I'll analyze it again. It means that in the moment, it's very confusing, and in the moment, it's very draining, because I'm constantly looking out for what's happening and trying to figure out, what should I say next? When someone says, "How are you?" what are they looking for? And so that's why a lot of autistic people learn coping mechanisms like scripting, for example. An undiagnosed autistic friend of mine the other day, I said hello, and he said, "I'm good, thanks." Right? That's because we're like, oh, someone greeted me. Oh yeah, I'm good, thanks. Like, I'm not actually responding. I'm responding to my habits of what I can do to get over this situation. Now, this won't always be obvious from the outside. As I said before, masking, camouflaging, faking confidence, it's actually relatively easy to do. And well, for some of us, it's relatively easy to do, but it's exhausting to do at the same time. And if you have to put on this mask in front of other people, then when you finally get to go by yourself and you can drop the mask and finally just relax and do whatever it is you need to do without worrying about what other people are going to think, without having these constant demands like looking people in the eye. One of the reasons looking people in the eye is difficult is because when someone looks you in the eye, they're expecting you to know exactly what they're thinking and feeling and respond to that with your face. And that's really difficult when you're not sure what the other person is thinking and feeling or how to respond. Okay, anyway, I've probably gone on enough with that. These were supposed to be short examples. And just again, I want to acknowledge that probably every human being has experienced some level of these things at some point in their life. But I guess the difference here, and this goes especially back to number 2, is when you've spent your whole life not being believed, to finally find people and a community that do believe you and do validate you and do say crazy things like, "I understand," it's absolutely life-changing to have that experience that you previously thought no one else had and no one else could possibly understand, to have that validated and to find out other people have had this experience as well. That is why diagnosing yourself as being autistic can be an incredibly powerful moment in a person's life to realize all of those things. Now, many of us will also want an official diagnosis, and I won't go into that in detail now, but I've also done a video on the pros and cons of getting an official diagnosis versus being happy with self-identifying as autistic. Okay, so part 3 of this video, what to do from here if this stuff sounds like you. So if you've been listening to these 3 defining experiences and it really resonates with you and you just want to find a community of people who understand what you're going through, then you might be on the spectrum, and I would encourage you to look into the matter further. Most adults I know came to the realization that they were autistic before they received an official diagnosis. So finally, in answer to the question, how do I know if I'm on the spectrum or not? The most definitive answer I can say is if you find another person and another person's experience and they know they are on the spectrum and you highly, highly resonate to that person to an unbelievable degree, then you can be pretty sure that you are also on the spectrum. Now, you will probably not have this level of intense connection with every other autistic person out there. There are many, many, many types of autistic people. We're all different. So I would encourage you to look for people of similar age, similar gender, similar culture, similar experience, and see if their experiences, and especially their hidden internal struggles and their internal life, really resonate with you to a degree that you thought wasn't possible. If that's the feeling that you're getting, then you're probably on the spectrum. And if you're unsure, I would encourage you to continue looking and continue getting your questions answered. Your questions are valid. They deserve adequate answers, and you are the person that defines if an answer is adequate or not, if someone has understood you or not. If you are going to speak to a professional, I suggest you take as much evidence as possible to make your case and tell them all the reasons why you're asking the question of am I on the spectrum in the first place. You may also want to take a support person with you, especially if sometimes stressful situations impede your communication ability. And this advice is especially, yes, I know I'm going into advice mode at the moment, but especially if you're in a crisis situation, if something not good has happened in your life that is leading you to wonder if you're on the spectrum, keep looking, look for support. You don't need an official diagnosis to warrant support. So if you need support, go out and find it. You are worthy of getting help. We're probably over time, but another quick warning is that this is really, really big stuff. If you have listened to these things and something has touched something really deeply, that's probably a sign that there's a lot more in there that hasn't come out yet. So I just want to give it like a bit of a floodgate warning. Once you start unpacking these really deep questions of who am I, there can be a lot that comes out and it can be quite overwhelming, quite literally life-changing. So I just want to re-emphasize the importance of having a support network. And if you don't have a support network, finding a support network. It could be other autistic people, it could be friends and family. I would recommend trying to find and make friends with some other autistic people as well, especially those who resonate with your experience, because we don't always resonate with every other autistic person, but when we do, it's absolutely amazing. If you're looking for other resources, on my written blog, I've published over 20 diagnosis stories, so you can read people from all over the world, different ages and genders and different backgrounds, and see how different yet somehow connected our autistic experience has been. In a similar way, I've also got a playlist of Aspie interviews, which is another good way to get to know what does autism look like in real life. Because for me, that was the trigger point for me when I saw what autism looked like in real life, not just this medical definition. Suddenly, it was something that I could immensely relate to. There may also be autistic support groups or just social groups in your area, so check online, check Meetup, check other places like that to see if there's any way that you can meet autistic people in real life. And I might leave it there. There's been a lot in this video. It's been a huge topic. I've already broken it into 3 and they're still going way over time. But I hope you found this really helpful. I encourage you to take your questions seriously. It's a worthy question to ask. If you think you might be on the spectrum, it's a worthy question to get an adequate answer to. So I hope this has been helpful. And stay tuned next week for the last part 3 of this Patron's Choice video, where I'll go through some questions that you can ask yourself. And again, I want to put the emphasis on you're asking yourself these questions. These questions are not to diagnose someone else by looking at them from the outside. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider supporting this channel on Patreon, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.